Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I found it! My goodness. As you know, for some time, I've been occasionally reminding all of you how to use the home page on this channel to use the little search in the middle of the page, off to the right, but after the playlist and videos and about, there's a little magnifying glass, and use that search to find videos in the well over 800 videos on this channel so far, to find it by keyword or subject. But I admit it, I am an imperfect being. I've been talking quite a lot through recent videos about the 9 consciousnesses and using that search to find videos on the 9 consciousnesses. And the one video that keeps coming to my mind that I want to share with you, that I want you to go and research, has a diagram, a triangle diagram. You've heard me talk about this, of the 8 consciousnesses, and the 9th consciousness being the Buddha awareness, which is, when enlivened, when awakened, actually surrounds, or that's a pictorial representation, but it embraces all the consciousnesses, right? To try to defeat that idea that we leave one set of consciousnesses and opt for another. That's not the way it works. It works as the 9th consciousness envelops, is the word I was looking for, all the others. And we don't get rid of anything in Buddhism other than our attachment, our sense of permanentizing, identifying everything. That is where our misery comes from. Because we set up this false idea of reality, which is a constructed thing, and release from that construction doesn't mean obliterating what's constructed. It means obliterating our false sense of permanence of construction and being in the moment of instantiation of all these sparks of life, yeah? A very different shift in realizing our life, our true moment-to-moment life, and the life of life, all of it. So I found that diagram was illustrated that point to a fashion. And didn't even realize I had... I'm a silly man. Anyway, long story short, look at all these diagrams I wasn't able to find until today. Silly man. The video that I linked it in the last video, and I'll link it again in this one. I titled it because at the same time as I was making that I was making that video, I was responding to an older book I had written, put together many years ago, called Beyond Zen. I've retired this particular version of the book, and some of you may have it, because I did a massive rewrite, went through the whole thing, updated it, and I mean, it didn't change it substantially, but you know I'm a bit of a fetishist when it comes to language, and language being as accurate as possible. Being that language is an abstraction to begin with, it's impossible to make it supremely accurate, especially when discussing Buddha-ness, yeah? But this book looks totally different now. It's red and white, and the title is a long-winded one, if I could remember what it is right now. It's the Independent Nichiren. Oh, come on, where is it? I know I have a picture of it in here somewhere. There it is. So the title is Independent Nichiren Doctrine of Lotus Sutra Buddhism. That is the new title of the fully revised version, but there's a chapter in the book called Wuji to You and Me. And it starts from ancient Chinese Taoist, really, theory, and applies it or demonstrates its descriptive knowledge or linguistics about this idea of the universe, life, volition, and where Buddhism takes over from that is this addition of consciousnesses and the awareness versus attachment. And so it's an important chapter in the book. Shorts. But that's what I called the video. Nowhere in that title does it say 9 consciousnesses or consciousnesses. I have referred to the Nidana Skandhas, 9 consciousnesses or consciousnesses video, and there's a lot of good information in that. I think it's a 3-part series of video. But the one that I kept trying to direct you to, I couldn't remember the title of, so I finally found it. I linked it in the last video. I will link it again here, and I will put some pictures of the title of the newer book, the one I just read, and I will put some new pictures up that I created in PowerPoint that describe the 8 consciousnesses, the 9 actually, in their order of understanding. And then the second drawing will be how, when enlivened, the 9th consciousness actually contains all of them. It's an illustration, but I think it's a powerful visual reminder, certainly for people like me. I'm extremely visual. We all are to different degrees, but anyway, I speak in visual terms, so maybe that will help. And I just now found the original PowerPoint slides that I made for the video right after the video. In the video, I draw it out on a whiteboard. So you'll have several versions of this visual thinking. Anyway, all right. Now that I've taken care of that piece of business, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tolerating my humanness. It's all good. You know, we all have the same mission here, and something I congratulate you for all the time is sticking with your practice, because sometimes, you know, we're human. We get distracted. We have doubts. We have stumbling blocks. We get tired. All that stuff, yeah? But you must persevere in the face of all that human distraction, that the one thing you want to remain constant about in your life is daily Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, awaken that 9th consciousness, so that the rest of your consciousnesses can be more aligned, more life-affirming, more supportive of the complete expression of your potential. And so for that, I honor you, I praise you, and personally, I'm not only gratified, but I have a sense of great appreciation for your effort. So please know that. And I just received a donation in the form of equipment. I'm hoping will improve a constant nagging problem I've had with recording these videos, where there's dropped frames, little hitches and things like that occasionally. I find them tremendously annoying, but we do the best we can, yeah? And short of having the funds, I keep saving and saving, and one of these days I'll get like a really strong desktop system that will have plenty of memory and plenty of compute power for the different, because it's not just a central processing unit. Any of you know about computers. It's all of the IOs, right? All the USB ports. They're not all the same. They may be labeled similarly, but the way they're processed, the hardware in the computer affects that computing power, that speed of transfer. And videos and more than audio are very intensive in their use of resources. And so laptops struggle to have that kind of performance built into them. Whereas desktops, simply because there's more room, the electronics, the boards that they can have, they can be more robust. So one of these days I'll get there. But in the meantime, I've received another laptop, and that laptop seems to be a very high performance, as this one is, but it has a more updated processor. And once I get through modifying it, adding memory, blah, 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 hopefully I can use it exclusively for this production of recording and use my current computer, my current laptop, to do the post-production, because there's not as much pressure on the system and its components. It can take its time to render videos post-production and get it ready to upload to the internet, right? We'll see. I received it today. I'm super, super grateful. I immediately offered it to at my altar for Gohonzon to appreciate and use in its utmost, and to guide me in its setup and its usage. So this is a donation to all of us, right? Not me personally. This is what I'm doing. This is my effort with Gohonzon, with this practice to propagate. And so I receive the donation in that way, and I want to maximize that donation with my Buddha mind to utilize it at its most useful, right? All right, again, more business, lots of business at the beginning of this video. So let's get into it. We are still into the introduction of Mr. Suzuki here in his translation of the Lankavatara. We've noticed some little hitches, albeit whether it's because this is an earlier Mahayana sutra or whether it's personal of Mr. Suzuki's cultural biases and the breadth of his scholarship. You know, we're all human. I'm not putting them down. I'm just identifying there are some areas that are, let's say, a little questionable in his understanding. Yet there's a tremendous amount of really useful thoughts and insights into the aspects of Mahayana Buddhism, which is why I chose to read this introduction first, because it's a more general definition, albeit through Mr. Suzuki's eyes, and now through mine, right? And so now he's going to talk, and the reason I started out with these consciousnesses to begin with is because the limitation that Mr. Suzuki has in his introduction here, whether he's imposing it simply because it's the Lanka that he's translating, or whether this is his limitation, I can't say. But he's only talking about 8 consciousnesses. He's not referring to the 9th consciousness as such. He's referring to Buddha as something other, although he personifies it all the time with pronouns of he, him, descending, and so forth. And this is why I think maybe he's missing that 9th consciousness study, yeah? But let's get into it. He does do service to the concept of the Nidana, and which is, the early forms of definitions of consciousness in our samsaric experience. So he's going to marry the nidana with the 8 consciousnesses, and I think there's some value to that. But I'm still going to push the Wuji to you and me, because that's where we really take a great leap with the Lotus Sutra and our practice of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra Buddhism, to understanding the scholarship since Tendai of 9 consciousnesses, yeah? Of these 6 Vijnanas, the Mano Vijnana is the most important, as it directly relates to an inner faculty known as manas. Is it the most important? There's a point to argue. See, if you understand that Buddha is part of your consciousnesses, your mind, it's inherent, it's been there all along, and that what we do is enliven it, then obviously that's the most important aspects of our mind, yeah? But if we don't include it in this way, the little dog is moving around. You okay, Chloe? Just laying. Oh, yeah, she goes and lays on the floor. She gets exhausted, all that sleep, you know. Anyway, so he's identifying the consciousnesses via the word manas, and he's calling out the the Mano Jivnana as the most important. That's a point to be argued, yeah? Manas roughly corresponds to mind as an organ of thought. But in fact, it is more than that, for it is also a strong power of attaching itself to the result of thinking. So this is how he's defining the attachment of our permanentizing of things through our facility of thought, and the mind taking, basically thought, he means perception, right? And our mind seizing upon those perceptions is an act of holding on to, of possessing and letting go, right? That mechanism of this is mine, this is yours, this is how I define me. It all happens there. And I would say, if he said it that way, that that's absolutely accurate. Not because I'm accurate, but because that's what's happening in our samsaric mind of attachment, right? And our Buddha consciousness doesn't do that. It observes, it is witness to the constant moment-to-moment instantiation of all potentials, albeit in our personal experience, those potentials appear to our potentials karmically, individually. That's why it would seem, without Buddhism, that we all see the world differently in our own way. Not an inaccurate statement, but that seeing, that idea of the way worldviews and disparate worldviews is based on the alaya consciousness, our karmic train, which we're not conscious of. We can identify it if we study, but it influences our epistemology, our basis for our engine of our filter, our program of witnessing. And then we have another layer of mind that categorizes all that stuff, identifies, right? So the identification happens in 3 points in our mind. Our tendencies and conditions, which affects everything, our little inner decision making based on that karmic tendencies and conditions, and then our solidifying of those perceptions into things that we carry along with us, definitions, identification, me, not that, that, not me, right? The way we form our ego and our version of the world through those steps. Yeah. What that ignores, of course, is the primary step, which is that we're just experiencing everything all the time. And that isn't attached. That's the Buddha consciousness, yeah? But we don't bring that to mind because we're so busy identifying and purchasing, if you will, everything we see. Yeah? So, let's see if we can get a little further before I interrupt again. The latter may even be considered subordinate to this power of attachment. So he identifies it right there. The manas first wills, then it discriminates to judge. To judge is to divide, and this dividing ends in viewing existence dualistically. Okay, more words to say the same thing. Hence the manas' tenacious attachment to the dualistic interpretation of existence. Willing and thinking are inextricably woven into the texture of manas. Okay, we can go with that for now. Sita, a word we've discovered in earlier sutras, right? Vasubandhu talked a lot about sitas when he was describing the skandhas, right? Comes from the root sit, to think, or to perceive. But in the Lanka, the derivation is made from the root si, to pile up, or to arrange in order. The sita is thus a storehouse where the seeds of all thoughts and deeds are accumulated and stored up. The sita, however, has a double sense, general and specific. When it is used in the general sense, it means mind or mentation or ideas, including the activities of manas and manovijnana, and also of the vijnanas in total, while specifically it is a synonym of the alaya vijnana, which is what I was saying earlier, in its relative aspects and distinguishable from all the rest of the mental faculties. So it's alaya. So he's adding to the alaya, which I was saying earlier is our karmic engine, right? Our tendencies and conditions. And he's saying that within the alaya is also a storehouse of the impressions we have. And I think he's pointing to our word epistemology there, from those tendencies and conditions. I'll have to refer to Wuji and you and me, right? When, however, it is used in the form of sita matra, or mind only, it acquires still another connotation. We can say that sita appears here in the highest possible sense, for it is then neither simply mentation, nor intellection, nor perception as a function of consciousness. It is identifiable with the alaya in its absolute aspect. This will become clearer later on. Now, I think he's... this is where my question of the ninth consciousness becomes more piqued about Mr. Suzuki's dissertation here. He may simply be identifying that aspect of the alaya which I identified first as the storehouse of our tendencies and conditions, our karmic freight train, as I often call it, yeah? Or he may be alluding to maybe the clarified butter of the alaya being our Buddha mind. That would be incorrect, but he's trying to slide Buddha into the consciousnesses here without identifying as the ninth consciousness. I'm not sure if that's what he's trying to do. Let's read on and see. Alaya Vijnana is the alaya plus the Vijnana. Yeah, he's doing a little word play here. Okay. And alaya is a store where things are hoarded for future use. Again, not specifically incorrect, but you can see what he's wrestling with here. The Sita, as a cumulative faculty, is thus identified with the alaya vijnana. Strictly speaking, the alaya is not a vijnana, has no discerning power in it. So here, he's struggling, saying this alaya layer, this alaya consciousness isn't a consciousness per se. It may lead to the consciousnesses, but he's even questioning the eighth consciousness as a pre-existing set of circumstance from which the mind results. That's one way of looking at our karmic freight train, isn't it? So it's not specifically wrong, but it's struggling to perceive the nature of the nine consciousnesses again. It indiscriminately harbors all that is poured into it through the channel of the Vijnanas. In other words, in every single thought moment, we are applying energy or applying, come on, Sylvain, action to the energy that is our freight train. And so this is we creating new karma as a result of being. We are constantly influencing our karmic freight train. We are adding and subtracting influences and commitments to certain tendencies and conditions. So that's not wrong. The alaya is perfectly neutral, indifferent, and does not offer to give judgments. Yeah, it's tendencies and conditions. The judgments come after, come through the evaluation that is being plugged into that formula of tendencies and conditions, right? If you have a box that's of a certain size and dimensions and volume, what you put into that box is defined by that box, but the box is not defining what you put into it. It's simply the box. You can either fill every nook and cranny of it, or you can put something lesser into it. It's not a great analogy, but the box is not causal. What you put into the box is a function of the box, and it's your box, and the box is the box. It's not modifiable in the sense that it comes with predefined parameters, but because we're living beings, we can cut the box, we can add more cardboard to the box and tape it up, but now it's a different box. So if you think of the box as the karmic equivalent of the box, the manufactured from tendencies and conditions, the box, then we're constantly modifying karma, whether we're trying to or not. It isn't a matter of trying, it is the parameters of our existence, yeah? Relation between the various functions. Okay, so he's going to jump out of this discussion. He feels he's said enough. Having explained what the various important terms mean and what functions are indicated by them, let us proceed to see in what relationship they stand to one another. Okay, so he's really kind of superficially breezed over all of this. And I don't think that if this is your initial exposure to the consciousnesses or the nidana or their proper order and their function, I think that you'll be this may be enough to keep you going for a while. But I think if you want a much more profound, and therefore, and I'm this way, maybe you are too, I have to achieve a certain amount of granularity in everything that I do to lift my confidence that I absolutely understand what's happening. That I can then look from any angle and, yeah, that's what I thought it was, right? This has been kind of superficial, like the box analogy. It's kind of, it's loose. So there's a book by Julius Sivola that I've often recommended about, and he talks about the early teachings, but he does a deep dive into the Nidana that I've never read anything more scholarly or insightful. And I use it all the time in portions in my discussions of the Nidana, and it's in Wuji and You and Me. Okay? He really takes it apart. And then I have diagrams that take it apart. And maybe I'll put that up in this video too, just so you can see those thought experiments. And that leads to a much more granular and confidence-inspiring discussion of the consciousnesses, how the mind is working and categorizing and creating this miasm of attachment, yeah? And how Buddha-ness operates within that. And I think that's extremely important so that it grounds us, so that we understand that Buddhism is a pragmatic way of understanding life, all of life, certainly our own. It's all the same. But without that granularity, it still can seem like some far-off, cloudy package outside of ourselves that we're trying to find, which is fundamentally incorrect, right? And Nichiren does his best to try to identify this. Never seek Gohanzen outside of yourself. Seek the law, not the person. What's another one? Just let it slip out of my head. Well, that Buddhahood is inherent. It's built in. It's part of our existence. It is our existence. But identifying that, as much a conundrum as that statement was, is our practice of Buddhism. And more, it's not identifying so much as it is unleashing it, uncaging it, unobfuscating it. Once that light shines, nothing else is in the dark. Yeah? And it's already there. It just requires our Gohanzen, our liberating it from the constructs that we've built, the box. Yeah? So yeah, once again, I'm gonna put a bunch of visuals up here. You can screen grab them. Or you could simply get the book and you'd have them all in print. I don't know how else to make it easily accessible. Diagrams are useful to me. They help me see an order to things. All right, let's continue a little further here. Yeah, we've got some time. The whole system of mental functions is called, in the Lanka, the Sita Kalapa, or the Vijnana Kaya. So the operations of the mind, right? What's going on in here? Sita and Vijnana are here used synonymously. So the mental cognition of things and the operation of the mind in the Lankavatara are treated equally. That's a division, though, of earlier teachings of Buddhism, and the Sitas is a very important discussion on the mechanisms of the mind and how it identifies, which, strictly speaking, certainly is a dissected, intuitive part of what mind does at its different levels, but is not equal to mind. So that's an important point to keep in mind as we read his transcription of the Lankavatara. It may appear again, so just make a note of it. In this mental system, 8 modes of activity are distinguished. See, there it is again, 8 consciousnesses. But he is talking of the parameters of the Lankavatara. So we may, as we will see, apply his definition here to the Lankavatara specifically as a not completely evolved Mahayana teaching, which it isn't, right? The Alaya Vijnana, the Manas, the Mano Vijnana, and the 5 sense Vijnanas. So there it is, the 8 consciousnesses. When these 8 Vijnanas are grouped together under 2 general heads, the one group is known as the Khyati Vijnana, the perceiving Vijnanas, and the other as the Vastuprati Vikalpa Vijnana, object discriminating Vijnana. So he's carrying over the old definitions of the Vijnana as a sense organ, but it's only a sense organ by virtue of its sensing objects, right? You can use your sight consciousness when you can see stuff. But if it's pitch black, your sight consciousness is almost completely turned off, albeit for the perception of darkness. So the mind, in the early Buddhist definitions, is seen this way, the consciousnesses, and it's really easy to understand through the lower realms, the lower 6 consciousnesses, or 5, of smell, touch, sight, oral, all of that, that if you take away the object of perception of those consciousnesses, then you could say those consciousnesses are no longer conscious, or that they're devoid of sense objects, so they don't sense. Buddhism grapples with this throughout the early teachings a lot, and Vasubandhu did his best to decipher all of that, to the point that if you try to read Vasubandhu in one sitting, you'll give up. It takes a tremendous amount of marination. You have to marinate on these ideas to start to be able to individuate the steps, right? Much like we do with molecules and atoms or chemistry or biology, yeah? It takes a while to discern all of these different various minutiae and combine them into something else or something manufactured, right? The components versus the product. But in fact, the Vijnanas are not separable into these 2 groups. Those, like I was just saying, to separate the atoms of a methane molecule does not give you something other than methane. It is just that methane is a construct of these other atoms. But they work together to be methane. Yeah? For perceiving is discriminating. You can't, this is our powerful identification mechanism. The moment we perceive, we identify. In fact, identification comes from perceiving, but perceiving is a function of identification. Why would you have to perceive anything if you were not discriminating it from what it is not? It's built in, you see? For perceiving is discriminating. When an individual object is perceived as such, that is, as solid or as colored, etc., discrimination has already taken place here. Indeed, without the latter, the former is impossible, and conversely. Every Vijnana performs these 2 functions simultaneously. They're just 2 aspects of the same thing, yeah? You can't have a front without a back. You look at yourself in the mirror and you see a front, but you know there's a back. Even though you don't see it, the front obviates a back, right? Which is to say, one functioning is analyzable into 2 ideas, perceiving and discrimination. But it is to be observed that this double activity does not belong to the Alaya Vijnana. Because the Alaya is the parameters by which then we perceive and identify. The Alaya, the karma, doesn't do the identification. It's a parameter to our engine of attachment. So there is a shift here from the Alaya to the remaining 7 other consciousnesses. That's a good thing to point out. Another way of classifying the Vijnanas is according to their Lankshana, or modes of being, of which 3 are distinguishable as evolving, or pravriti, as performing deeds, karma, as I was describing earlier, when we apply action to energy, which is all of our freight train, we affect, we influence, yeah? And as retaining their own nature, because we come to the party with our tendencies and conditions, although we're constantly modifying it, we also slip back and return to it. And by doing those things, we recommit or we modify constantly, but we don't change the origin. We're just affecting its expression. This is life. From this viewpoint, all the Vijnanas are evolving and deed-performing Vijnanas, except the Alaya, which always abides in its self-nature. We'll dissect that further. For the Vijnanas may cease from evolving and performing deeds for some reason, but the Alaya ever remains itself. I think he would benefit from a deep discussion on the ninth consciousness. But we understand what he's talking from, and let's just give him the benefit of the doubt that this description and his discussion are specific to this Lankavatara. In that way, we can excuse some of the verbiage he's using here. And I think it may be very, very useful for this. But again, all of our study, as I've shared with you before, is going to be influenced by our knowledge of the Lotus Sutra. We can see beyond what this sutra is demonstrating. And certainly Suzuki's description of Mahayana in this context, and I will give him the benefit of the doubt, is influenced by his scholarship of the Lankavatara. I can't do that. I can't do that because I have studied and know well beyond the Lankavatara, and I'm not good at minimizing my understanding of something simply because it's an earlier step. And this is why I never took a career in teaching, because to me, the idea of teaching a class in algebra day in and day out for multiple years would drive me nuts. Unless I was able to describe that same parameters of mathematics with an eye and an appreciation to more evolved mathematics. But then I probably wouldn't be a good high school teacher, because everything in high school is about repetition and droning on about the same. And then the next semester, you shift into the next step and drone on to that. That takes a specific kind of application, and I deeply appreciate those men and women who take that on. Maybe as a college professor, there'd be less strict a parameter there, but I don't know. I think education is education. It's a system of graduating, not unlike Buddhism, right? But I think once you get to the Lotus Sutra, everything else changes. Everything else becomes, oh, yeah, I recognize that. Oh, I see where that's going. But that's because you know where you end up. When people are in the earlier stages, they have no idea where this is going to end up. They're still formulating understanding, right? And there's great value in that. But for us, in this era, the era of degeneration, this study helps us point to the path, albeit as a foundational surety. It helps build our confidence. But we're at the culminating event, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, right? So we already know. However, we constantly have little doubts arise, little word plays, and what does that mean? Maybe I don't understand that the way I thought. Don't let that bother you. That's what study is for. We can go back to the nitty-gritty and go, oh gosh, I so get now why I'm here, how I'm here, what this is really, what's really going on. So hopefully that's what this study does for you. It doesn't just add a bunch of mired in terminology for you. I'm trying not to let that happen, but as you know, if you've done any study in Buddhism, the expedient means can get a little bit, they can make your mind wander. Just understand that that's all about unearthing. It's about understanding the ocean, right? If you ever have gone to a beachhead, whether it's in a rocky place like in Oregon in the United States or in other countries, or white sand, clear beaches that slowly descend into the ocean, beaches that are littered with all kinds of sea life, shells, starfish. I remember as a kid in Vancouver, British Columbia, just starfish all over the rocks. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but different beaches identify a quality of beach, ocean, sand, that whole ecosystem far differently than the mind of someone who's never been to a beach, right? So being at the beach, knowing its various aspects, is very fulfilling of your confidence in beachness, yeah? So that's study. In the meantime, I'll be putting a bunch of images up here for you to see. Definitely link again to Wuji, you and me, and thank you so much. Thanks to like, subscribe, yeah, to be part of this, to download the audio podcasts if those are useful for you. Avail yourself to the free. All the information and the pictures I'm going to put up here will be available on threefoldlotus.com in various answers to the various questions on the course study materials page. And of course, there's the bookstore. And avail yourself to all the resources you can to identify your confidence and practice and keep it strong. Take care of your health. Be kind to yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. All right? Thanks so much. And where's my cursor? There it is. Bye for now.